Okay, Jesse, we are here together live today at the Podcast One Studios in Los Angeles. What magical story do you have for us on this special video version of our episode?
Lust, lies, adultery, wealth, cocaine, cocktails abound in this jazz age love triangle episode between a famous architect, his loving wife, and their teenage chauffeur.
I'm Andy Cassette.
And I'm Jessie Prey, and this is Love Murder. Welcome back, everyone, to Love Murder, a podcast about wedding bells, holy hells, and love gone fatally wrong.
You can find Love Murder on TikTok and Instagram at Love Murder Pod and on Facebook by searching Love Murder Podcast.
If you are enjoying this podcast, pretty please love/murder, a 5-star rating on your podcast app, subscribe, and review to help people discover the show.
Also, if you're interested in supporting the show more directly, head on over to patreon.com where you can learn all about the different tiers of support.
This week, as always, we are so excited to shout out another exceptional group of patrons.
Yeah, I know. This is a special one, huh?
Yeah.
So we've got Kelly M. and Shannon C.
Rebecca R. and Xenia.
And Nicole K. and Rebecca W.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Andy. It's like crazy to be actually looking at you right now.
I know. I mean, we've done the Zoom, but we've never done in-person recording.
No, never. And when we are in person, it's usually like sitting.
We have. We've never been recorded, though.
Yeah, we've been sitting in my basement, and you are like petting your Nick Cage pillow.
Yeah, with the sequins.
Yes, so this is a very different experience. It's pretty cool to be here. Like looking around like I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, thank you, Podcast One, for having us as well.
This is really fun. Okay, then I think that we should jump right into this very special episode.
Let's do it.
So you love them or you hate them, but today is an absolutely extraordinary ye old love murder. I found this case while I was Googling love triangle true crime audibles, and my goodness, I am so glad I did. It's got shades of Desperate Housewives, Hunting Wives, which we all know has been blowing up lately.
Jesse just made me watch that.
Yes, we are almost at the very exciting conclusion. And it also reminded me a little bit of our first ever episode, which was do you remember the car stereo king of Chicago?
Yes, I remember.
Yes, there's a little bit of the Karma Fairy, which made its appearance in that very first episode, is a little bit at play here.
Okay, I also heard you mention cocaine, which was also at play in that first episode
lots
as
of cocaine. Well. And for the first time being used, I think, in a legal defense.
Okay.
It's so thoroughly modern in so many ways that it's shocking that this case happened in 1935. But, as we know, sadly, love triangle murders are evergreen. As long as love, lust, and deception are at play, there will be murder. Today, we'll be discussing a crime so famous for its time that it was listed as one of the 5 most notable murders in the UK that happened between 1931 and 1940. According to the book Deadly Triangle by Susan Goldenberg, one of the affairs in this episode has been called British Columbia's all-time most famous sex scandal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, I mean, it's been a while if it's still the all-time most famous.
Yeah, almost 100 years.
Yeah, I think those Canadians are better people than we are. If it's made it 100 years and this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Yeah. And speaking of Deadly Triangle, I wanted to note it as our main source today, but also thank Susan Goldenberg, the author, who did an extraordinary job on this book. It was super compelling and interesting to read, but she also made lists of the main characters and how they related to everyone, which made making this episode that much easier.
It's almost as if she wrote the book for you.
Thank you, Susan Goldenberg. I appreciated it. Trigger warning today for the most dramatic suicide that we have ever covered on the history of the show.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll let you know when we're getting near to that, but I think you'll see it coming. Okay. So let's start out by talking about our famous architect, Francis Mawson Rattenbury. Susan Goldenberg wrote, during his lifetime, admirers praised Francis as a visionary and a genius, while critics called him unscrupulous, a thief, a fraudster, a cheating husband, and a drunk. She said all of these descriptions were accurate.
That's a lot to wear.
That's a lot of
hats.
A lot of something in one person. Francis was born on October 11th, 1867 in Leeds, England. He was smart, but he also had a very high opinion of himself. At just 10 years old, he quit school with the intention of becoming a professional artist.
Oh.
But he wasn't very good. So he didn't quite make it. However, he was always swinging for the fences. That's what everyone said about Francis, was that he was thinking big, he was going big. And he actually found his niche in architecture, and that was where his big dickedness really served him.
I mean, architecture is a form of art, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. He just had to find his place.
Yeah.
He won a national contest by the Royal Institute of British Architects when he was just 23 years old.
Okay, impressive.
Yeah, so he was out the gate doing pretty darn well, although he had that 13 years to build his resume because he wasn't in school since when he was 10. The next year, he immigrated to Canada, and this is where his career really took off. He would go on to build some very famous buildings that are still standing and celebrated, including the British Columbia Parliament buildings in Victoria and the Burns Manor in Calgary. Okay. As a young man, Francis was handsome, forthright, and charming. Again, he was known for being exceptionally ambitious. So I was recently having this conversation with somebody that I think in order to do big things, you kind of have to have a big ego.
Yes, yeah.
You have to be, like, if you're not your own number one fan, who is going to be?
We were literally talking about that on the way here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this is where he's coming into his own.
Yes.
And it's really serving him. We will like look at the earlier pictures of Francis. I think he kind of, and I forget this actor's name, but he kind of looks like the redhead from Shameless. Oh, when he's young.
He's
so
so
Cameron
great.
Monaghan, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's what he looked like. Now, as he gets older, he looks like a different actor from Mad Men, who I definitely can't remember his name. But that's like his journey of
arc.
looks. Yeah, his arc. So people enjoyed working with him, absolutely, because he was considered somewhat of a genius. But they also had issues, interpersonal issues, as people do when they work with genius, which is that he was temperamental, occasionally hard to work with, and was known for going over budget, which was particularly a problem when the people who were paying him were usually paying him a percentage of how much the total project cost. So there was like some scuttlebutt that maybe he was driving the prices up because then he got a bigger cut.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think that's, being mean to your employees is different from gouging some government officials for
basically it. He was gouging the government. Yeah. He was a mover and a shaker and considered quite the eligible bachelor. So people were surprised when he seemingly married below his station. Ugh. Francis married his lover, a woman named Florence Flory Nunn, after impregnating her.
Wait, her name's Florence Flory Nunn?
No, it's like Florence. Her nickname's Flory.
Okay.
That's like a lot of Florence and Flory going on. She went by Flory.
Okay.
And it sounded like basically her father had died and then her mother had abandoned her and her brother in a boarding house. And I think she was pretty young and trying to get by, and I'm not sure what she was doing for money at that point. And it seems like maybe she met him at this boarding house somehow.
Okay.
So it's like a dubious connection of how this relationship started. But when she fell pregnant, he did do the right thing, and he married her, thereby elevating her socially. I mean, this is all really fucked up to talk about, obviously.
Age difference?
I think that they were still both fairly young. Okay. So I don't think that this was one of those things where he's 40 and she's 18.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that they were within 5 years of each other. Yeah. So they got married on June 18th, 1898, and Flory had no family except for her brother. So this was not a social match by any means, and from what I understood, it was a relatively smaller wedding.
While she was still pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a way a lot of people do it, actually.
Yeah.
They have smaller weddings if somebody's pregnant.
Yeah.
The couple settled in Victoria, British Columbia, while Francis built a dream home for them. Francis named their new home. It was, and I'm going to butcher this, guys, so please forgive me. It's like an indigenous name, Ayashanil. It was a term for the place where good things happen, which is such a nice idea. But then in the caption of the picture in Susan Goldenberg's book, she wrote, "It wasn't." It wasn't.
I like Susan.
Yes. On the outside, the Rattenburys had a dream life. They welcomed 2 children in 1899 and 1904. First, a boy named Frank, after Francis.
What?
And a girl named Mary. They had horses and stables, beautiful garden parties. It's all very turn of the century, upper crust. They're having croquet and tea parties. It's very Alice in Wonderland over here. And really, even though Florence was still not considered exactly one of them,
Yeah.
they were part of the social strata.
Yeah.
Francis was involved in local government. He became a councilman and eventually a mayor.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's from all those bonuses.
But Francis made some bad monetary decisions too. So he liked to gamble. So I think it was on gold maybe or oil futures, but he was always looking for the next payday, the next big thing. And so their fortunes were very up and down as a result. Beyond that, the couple had basically found themselves at a general mismatch. It seemed like passion had started, and then as they got older and they raised their kids, that initial spark was kind of burning out, and they found themselves having nothing in common.
Okay.
Yeah, Flory was considered, this is brutal, both boring and not blue-blooded enough for high society.
What quote is that? Who quoted that?
That's what they said.
Just like commoners?
People, yeah, not commoners. The high society was like, who's this boring orphan?
That is so fucked up. That is so fucked up.
It is, no, it's desperately fucked up. And also she which I wouldn't want to go out if people thought that of me either. So she really didn't like to go out so much.
She's like, fuck you guys.
Yeah, and he loved going out. He was an amateur pianist, so he's like tickling the ivories and he's entertaining everyone with stories, talking about all the buildings he's built.
Let me guess, she's at home taking care of the child.
The children. Yes. And eventually they just grew apart, and the relationship grew so poor that they stopped speaking to each other entirely and communicated solely through their daughter, Mary.
That's so messed up for Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that there was probably some discreet infidelity on Francis's part prior to December 29th, 1923. So at that point, they'd been married for, I believe it was 26 years or something.
Okay.
But that was the night he met a beautiful young woman named Alma, who was basically the asteroid to the dinosaurs of their marriage.
Thank you for the sound effects. That was very effective.
We're in studio, so I have to give a little extra. So let's talk about our femme fatale girl of the hour, Alma.
Femme fatale named Alma.
I know, it seems counterintuitive, but here we are. Susan Goldenberg wrote that men were attracted to Alma like moths to a flame. She was, quote, entrancingly beautiful, with dark blonde hair, mesmerizing gray eyes, and a low, seductive voice, a shapely figure, and an engaging personality.
Oh, she's got personality.
She's the whole package. She was described by the press as having looks and allure in abundance.
Wow.
I know, we should all be so lucky to get that description. Maybe I should lower my voice more. Alma was born on June 9th, 1892, so just about 25 years Francis's junior, for those keeping score at home.
And a Gemini.
And was 7 years old when their first child was born. Oh boy.
That's not nothing.
And for the first 25 years of Alma's life, she was a model citizen and a very well-behaved young lady. No one who knew her in her youth would have ever imagined that she'd go on to become an international symbol of scandal. Alma was not only bright and beautiful, but considered a musical prodigy. At the age of 14, she could, now this means nothing to me, but for my musical people, this hopefully means something to you. At the age of 14, she could transpose into 18 tonal keys, playing piano in any of the tonal keys requested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but apparently it was a big deal. Enough worth noting in this book.
Yeah.
She won considerable awards and scholarships in Canada and became somewhat of a celebrity. Like when she got sick, it was covered in the newspapers.
Why, like send her well wishes?
Yes.
Okay.
Like she's our songbird and pianist is finally recovering from her illness. The music and drama critic of Toronto's Globe newspaper wrote that she was, quote, brilliant. Her execution is admirable. And all with perfect ease. A British Columbia magazine hailed her as Western Canada's brightest musical prodigy. Another critic wrote that she was a musical genius and that her playing was in tune with the infinite. I think that's going a little overboard.
I mean, we don't know, you know?
Maybe she was just that good. Life was good for Alma. She met and married the love of her life when she was 21. He was a handsome Irish realtor who was distantly related to aristocracy. Are you ready for his name?
Yeah.
Caledon Robert John Radcliffe Dowling. The fancier you are, the more names you have.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. They were head over heels in love with one another, but sadly, he did not survive World War I, where he had been stationed. So he died right around their second anniversary. Alma was widowed tragically by the age of 24 years old. 6 months later, hoping to honor his service, she volunteered as a nurse. And she wanted to support the war effort and was sent to France, where she worked at several battlefield hospitals and helped save countless lives. She was completely fearless and worked as a battlefield ambulance driver and field orderly. So she was like on the front lines.
Yeah.
Despite being badly injured twice, she never considered quitting. She had no quit in her. I think this was also something to work through her grief.
Yeah.
That she was being almost suicidal in her efforts with the war.
Yeah.
The French government awarded her with the Croix de Guerre with Star and Palm for bravery, which is a military award. And it is said that though all of this was extremely heroic, she may have picked up just a little bit of a cocaine addiction while she was on the front lines.
Wait.
Apparently, a ton of soldiers did a bunch of coke because they were constantly being shelled and you had to keep your energy up. So it was well known that occasionally people came home with little bitty cocaine addictions.
Oh my gosh.
Which
I can't believe
honestly-
that's what it was from. When you said 1935, I was like, it doesn't really strike me as like the cocaine heyday. But I guess if you're in the...
Yeah, I mean, this is happening much earlier than the events of the crime we're going to be discussing.
Okay.
Yes. But it's something that maybe she continued doing on into her
Crazy.
continued adulthood.
Crazy. It's like, yeah, I got into it during war.
Cocaine is not exactly appropriate in most workplaces or circumstances, but I would throw someone a bone for trench warfare.
Yeah, I can't be mad at that.
You got to do what you got to
Yeah.
do. The loss of her husband and witnessing multiple atrocities on the front lines permanently changed Alma.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the drug use. She shed her good girl musical prodigy, pride and joy of Western Canada image that she had had all of her life and was like, screw it. Like, what has being good my whole life gotten me?
Yeah.
I'm devastated. Everything was taken away from me. She's seen atrocities on the front lines. So when Alma's service was over, she kind of became a holy terror. She was going to do whatever she wanted, and she was going to get whatever she wanted. And this included a married man named Thomas Compton Pakenham, a.k.a. Compy, to friends and family. Compy was a soldier who, like her deceased husband, was from Irish aristocracy and had been born and raised, interestingly, in Japan.
Huh.
So he's
For
Irish.
military?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm guessing maybe that's why his family was out there. So
Okay.
he was distant Irish aristocracy, raised in Japan, and he could speak Japanese fluently as well as other languages. So Alma was super attracted to him because he was very worldly. The couple started a torrid affair in London, and Compy was eventually granted a divorce from his wife, Phyllis. So Alma and Compy moved to the United States amidst the scandal, and they married in 1920. So yeah, this is like the heyday of forgetting the Roaring Twenties,
Yeah.
the jazz age, especially in New York City.
Yeah.
And they were living it up. So they're really just having a time of their life. Alma was like the ultimate flapper, it girl of the scene. But as they say, as we say often, you lose them like you got them.
Yeah.
And turns out her new husband had quite the wandering eye. Alma wasn't putting up with that shit. She's like, I'm no Phyllis. So she filed for divorce in 1923 after less than 2 years of marriage and they had a baby, Christopher, the two of them together. So she took baby Christopher back home to Vancouver, where she lived with her mother and attempted to revive her musical career.
Okay.
Alma performed a number of recitals in Vancouver and Victoria. A show in early December of 1923 garnered her a rave review that said she was a brilliant pianist. It also garnered her one very ardent admirer, and amateur pianist and patron of the arts, Francis Mawson Rattenbury.
He's been a patron of the arts since he was 10.
He's moved from artist to patron of the arts. Yes. And, of course, considered himself an artist as well because he was still a very in-demand architect at this time.
And an amateur pianist.
So he was almost instantly besotted with her. And I think he saw her performing and didn't get a chance to speak with her. And then after her performance, he was speaking to people that might have something in common with her, or they might know somebody, his mutuals. And a woman was like, oh, she's actually playing again in my salon shortly in December. So this was like late December. So this is like a Christmas era party. Yeah. And she performed again at this party. And this time he had the hostess introduce them. And so they ended up spending the rest of the night in intimate conversation.
Now, is he still with Flory?
Oh,
legally?
yeah. He's still very legally married. His children are older. I believe that his daughter was maybe 20 at this time. So his son is 25.
Okay.
So they're older. I think that their daughter was still living in the house with Flory, but they might have both moved on, but definitely the son was out of the home.
Yeah.
Also, at this point, I think she was closer to 31, but she was telling people she was 26. So he's thinking that this is basically the same age as his son, and it is not stopping him. And it was not stopping Alma. She later wrote to a friend about the encounter, and so it was that I first met my rats, which is her nickname for him because his last name is Rattenbury.
Oh, my God.
The memory of that singing had gone to my head, and though I had resolved, as you know, never to marry again, but to devote myself to my music, that song seemed to make all the difference. Well, my dear, if I don't love him, I simply don't know what love is. So they're both pretty sprung. He's 56 at this time. She's 31. Like I said, she's telling people she's 26, so I think that's what he thought she was. Ugh. And old Rats is still married to his wife. But no matter, the old boy was quite taken with his talented little Songbird. And it was a matter of days, not weeks, before the two were embroiled in a scandalous affair. This is the sex scandal of British Columbia. Now, remember, Flory doesn't go out so much. Remember? She's a homebody. She likes staying at home.
Doesn't want to deal with any of this shit.
No. So Francis, why this became such a big sex scandal was that he just did not care what anyone thought. And he started publicly going out and canoodling with Alma everywhere, every party, going to the opera, anywhere where people would see them, and showing her off. He was buying her jewels and furs, and she's just like, look what Rats bought me. And people are like, girlfriend, he's married. She's like, I don't see a wife. So this was...
I've never seen a wife, but because she hasn't, because Flory doesn't leave the house.
But she knew, and so this ostracized both of them. Even the woman, the high society woman who had introduced them, ended up getting very upset. She was like, I don't want my name involved in this narrative, like that I introduced the two of you.
Yeah.
So this was very flagrant, and it was very shocking. Francis' adult children, who again were 20 and 25 at the time, were especially upset by the spectacle, and they believed and later told the media that the harlot had ensnared their father with seduction tactics and getting him hooked on
cocaine.
This episode sponsored by cocaine. Not really, guys. We did not condone the use of cocaine. So they, like, a lot of this episode behavior that I think is just human behavior gets blamed on cocaine usage.
Well, yeah, but I also think if they're already kind of taking the media by storm, throwing a little dust on there is going to just
help the headlines.
Spice it up, you know?
Yeah. So this is all generally terrible, of course, for Flory.
Yes. I mean, it's good for her health because she's not going down the slippery slope.
No, she's having a bad time. I think all the stress and sadness of the situation, though, is not good for her health either.
No.
And it gets so much worse. So initially she's like, no, I'm not going. She's pulling a Jennifer Hudson, Dreamgirls. And I'm not going.
Yeah.
So she's not going. She refuses to give him a divorce. And he can't get a one-sided divorce. So she's like, tough luck, Frank. Figure it out. And he's like, okay. Because he desperately wanted to remarry Alma. So he hired movers to go to their house and move every speck of furniture out of the home so she would have nowhere to sit or lay down or sleep.
Aren't one of the children in the home still?
I think Mary had moved out at this point.
Okay, I was going to say that is
Including
not cool.
her bed. So she was still like, I'm sticking to my guns. She got a cot.
I'm pretty sure that's considered some form of abuse.
Oh my gosh. I think that you could take legal action these days, but
Yeah.
this is 1920s.
Yeah.
So I don't think that she had as many legal options
Okay.
at this point. So, and he has all the money, so he has all the power.
Yeah.
So all the furniture goes. And then when she still wouldn't leave, he would have Alma come over to the house and play the piano, which I guess he had left, loudly, like all throughout the night.
So they're torturing
They're
her.
torturing this poor woman. Honestly, can you imagine your husband has an affair with a woman that is telling people she's like the same age as your son? He's embarrassing you socially.
Yeah.
He moves all of the furniture out of the home. And then he has his little turtlet come and play the piano all night as loudly as possible so you can't even sleep.
Yeah, that's messed up on
This
her
is
part too.
really bad.
Yeah.
This is really bad. And then even when she still wanted to stay, he was like, screw this. We're going on a fancy cruise. So they took off for a beautiful cruise. And
Was it the Titanic?
it was, if only. Then we would have been rid of these people before we had to talk about them.
Surprise! This is the Titanic episode.
And they were murdered by an iceberg. That's the love murder.
Wait,
Okay.
wasn't there like an SNL
Yes.
thing recently that you loved?
Bo
about
and
that?
Yang
Yeah.
was the iceberg. And he was talking about how he was victimized.
How offensive it was.
He was just living his life. And the Titanic came along and took off half of his ass. Excuse you.
Oh, it's so funny.
You guys should check that out. Please go check out Bo and Yang on SNL being the Titanic's iceberg. So they go off on a Mediterranean cruise.
Yeah.
And while they're gone, Frances has all of the electricity and the heat and everything turned off in the home.
And what time of the year did you say it was?
I'm not sure, but
Cold.
it was probably
Cold time?
cold times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was when she finally broke. Yeah, the telephone, lights, heat, everything, it's gone. And so Flory finally gave in and she filed for divorce herself, naming Alma as like a co-defendant, being very explicit in the legal proceedings, like, this is the woman who's involved in my marriage and why it's breaking up.
Okay.
And it was actually the second time in only 4 years that Alma had been named legally the other woman in a professional divorce decree.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know if that's what I would want my reputation to be.
No,
It doesn't look good.
no, it's not a great look.
No. But she's all coked up anyway. She doesn't know.
I mean,
She's the act.
I think she was a little scrambled from the war. And that's what Susan Goldenberg did right, that a lot of the heroic stuff that Alma really did truly do gets very lost to history.
Of course. Well, I don't know where this is going, but if she ends up being involved in a murder, then yeah, I think a lot of the heroic things that you do in your life end up getting brushed under the rug a little bit. And I think that's okay. I think
it's totally appropriate.
expectations should be, if you do good things, we will celebrate the good things if you don't murder someone.
Fair point. Very decently fair point. I think that's true. So this is a huge scandal. And this back and forth War of the Roses is getting newspaper attention daily. Like, they're salivating over it and they're covering this with bated breath, basically. So Flory did get a big fat settlement, which is great, good for Flory. And then she hired Frances's biggest rival architect to build her a new beautiful home.
Obsessed.
Get it, girl. 2 months after the divorce went through, Frances and Alma got married, and 3 years almost to the day of their first official meeting. So now this is on December 27th, 1928, they welcomed a son named John. So now she has a son from her second marriage named Christopher, who's a little older, and they together have a son called John. And, poor Flory died only 1 year later.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
In her beautiful new mansion?
Yes.
That's sad.
It's very sad. When daughter Mary, very understandably, snubbed Alma when Alma tried to offer condolences, Frances became so irate that he cut his children out of his will and left everything to Alma. Like, you're going to be really mad at your kid for being upset about the woman who maybe shortened your mother's life with all of the stress and pain.
Yeah. But now I see where the story might be going.
You think it's revenge? Like the children are going to kill Alma?
No.
It's like John Wick, child style.
he might have had it coming.
That's where that's shades of Car Stereo King.
Yeah.
Yeah. They ended up ostracized from Victoria society. So the lovers first traveled to Cuba before settling in Bournemouth, England. They lived in a home called Villa Madeira, which was on Bournemouth's East Cliff above the English Channel. Their time in this home was considered pretty happy, at least at the beginning. By all accounts, despite some of Alma's clear moral deficiencies, she was said to be a very good and loving mother to her two sons.
Okay.
But Rats was getting older, and their marriage, especially sexually, was suffering. They were allegedly not sexually active together, save for maybe a handful of times after John's birth.
Okay.
So we're in pre-Viagra times.
Yes. And
So-
he's 87.
He's like in his 60s. But we're also talking about like 1920s, 1930s.
Okay, so he's 104.
For age
Yeah.
inflation.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. So it's if he does get it up, it's like, poof. It's just dust.
Oh my God.
He allegedly suffered from impotence as he climbed into his 60s and beyond, which again, there's no shame in that game. He's just
No.
getting older, and that is what happens. And usually, if people are with somebody that is age appropriate,
You're in it together.
you're kind of going through these stages and the journey of life together. And so sex might become slightly less important to you as you age together. And
Yeah.
that's where your real partnership shines.
But for Alma,
But for Alma, she needs that dick. So this is not working out so great for her. Maybe she should have thought of that before she seduced a man who was
30 years her senior.
nearly 30 years older than her. Yes.
30 years senior her fake age.
Yes, yes. But it also didn't seem like Rats was really helping. He wasn't like, hey, doc, how can I like really get on top of this and make sure that my
Literally.
body and soul get on top of this? My body and soul are healthy and I can still, perform at my peak level. No, he was like getting shit-faced like every single day, starting in like the middle of the day and being very jolly by the nighttime, which is how Alma and her housekeeper put it as a euphemism for being drunk.
Is he very jolly tonight?
Yes, they said he would get real jolly starting in the afternoon. So he was jolliest in evening, and then he'd fall asleep in his armchair.
He's jolly again, eh?
Yep. And speaking of the housekeeper, it was a young woman named Irene Riggs who loved Alma. They were absolutely devoted to each other. So again, Alma takes what she wants. She's obviously participated in that torture of poor Flory.
Yeah.
But it seems like on the other side, she is a very loving mother, a very good friend, and she treats her household staff exceptionally well.
Yeah. And it's cool if that's like she does what she wants. Like you could, like, that's great that you want to be cool to staff. You know?
Just be cool. It'd be cooler if she could stop stealing people's husbands.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. It's a lot to ask, I guess.
Too much to ask of this woman. Irene later said, quote, "We were two great friends rather than mistress and maid. She was the most kind-hearted woman in the world and equally as generous. She often gave me clothes and money. She helped anyone in need that she came across, friend or stranger." So Francis was working less and less, which is also a strain because money's getting tighter with him having less architecture projects.
Yeah, it's hard to like erect things anymore, you know?
That was some like low-hanging fruit, which is another low-hanging joke right now. So he's not working as much. So he's around more often,
yeah.
and he doesn't have as much money.
He's getting jolly all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so now they're having more disputes because they're not intimate any longer, and he's now watching how much money she's spending, which she never had to think of before.
Yeah.
So at this point, Alma's like, well, I'll be the breadwinner. I'm going to compose and work under my professional name, Lausanne.
Sounds like a pharmaceutical commercial.
Sounds like a lozenge. Like, are your words catching in your throat?
Lausanne?
Lausanne. Lausanne. Yeah, I think it's like Suzanne, but
Please ask your
Lausanne.
doctors before using Lausanne with other prescription drugs.
Yes, it may result in murder. So she was trying to get this career launched again, this time in the UK, and it wasn't really happening. And so she's mostly at home with her husband, who is nearing 70, which was like I said, pretty darn old for the 1930s, who could no longer sexually perform. And they just seemed like they were loving-ish to one another, but almost more as nurse and patient.
Okay.
Like she's caring for him and she's like, oh, my sweet rats, patting him on the head. And that's kind
Head
of,
pat.
yeah, like we've reached that level of what's going on.
Okay.
Their son John later said, by now it was not a happy home. My father was reclusive and wasn't a happy man. So think about this. This is the turning of the tables here. She wants to go out. She wants to have a social life and he's tired and he doesn't. And now he's getting a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah.
He went on to say, the age gap between my parents was a problem. He was fast becoming an old man, and she was still a vibrant, beautiful woman. And wasn't only getting into drink, I think she might have been getting into drugs as well.
Yeah, she's been doing that for about 20 years. Maybe.
I don't think this is a new thing. So things aren't great. Alma is over rats. He is getting more and more frustrated with her spending. No one's satisfied. No one's happy. Enter a 17/18-year-old chauffeur named George Percy Stoner.
What?
Yes, this is why I said it's like Shades of Hunting Wives, which is a bit of a spoiler if you haven't watched. Sorry.
They don't know who, though.
Yeah, they don't know who. In the fall of 1934, a then almost 18-year-old George accepted the position of driver at Villa Madeira. George was the only child of a bricklayer and his mistress, George had dropped out of school at the age of 14, which wasn't uncommon for the time.
Yeah.
That's like where some boys' schooling ended and they went into the trades.
Yeah, I mean, Francis dropped out when he was 10.
Yeah, so he stayed in. He's had more formal education than Francis had. When he applied to be the chauffeur for the Rattenbury family, he did tell Alma and Francis that he was 22. Okay. He thought being a little bit older would help secure him the position.
We're all lying about our age.
Yes.
Okay.
Alma did believe him. He was, in fact, only 17 years old, and he did turn 18 a couple months into working for them on November 19th.
Crazy.
Now, I could not find one photo of this kid,
Okay.
but the newspapers described him as not matinee idol handsome, but pleasant looking, of medium height, 5'6", well-built, blonde hair.
5'6".
Yeah, but I mean, remember, people were smaller back in the day.
Yeah.
So he was like medium height.
Okay.
Yep. Which I think now I would still consider like 5'9" medium height now. Yeah. A well-built man with blonde hair, blue eyes, long fair eyelashes, clean cut, and a nice smile. He wasn't terribly bright and didn't have a lot of friends, they said. He was kind of isolated.
Yeah.
He had never had a girlfriend before. So meeting Alma, who wore these custom-made silky pajama sets because they were in fashion at the time, and was a musical genius in his mind and was the lady of this manor, really spun his head.
Yeah.
Because he has absolutely no experience with women. So at this time, Alma is 42, but she's telling everyone she's 37.
Okay.
And by all accounts, girlfriend was still quite the hottie. George was an impressionable youth. He was a virgin when he started working for the Rattenburys, and Alma came in hot. There was another guy who said that he had answered an ad, and he was in his 30s. And she had basically been like, the job's all yours if you want it, and came on to him very soon after the application process.
Okay.
And this was not used in a subsequent trial that occurs when we talk about the crime and what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's unclear whether they decided that it was unnecessary or if it was untrue.
Okay.
So we don't know. But we do know it did not take long for Alma to seduce young George here. The affair didn't begin until after George turned 18 in November of 1934, at which point he confessed that he was not 22, as he had actually just recently turned 18. Alma said later that she was shocked when she found this out because she said that he seemed so much more mature, which is, I feel like, what every creepy old person says about an exceptionally young person they're trying to shtup. They just have an old soul.
Yeah. They were wise beyond their years.
Yes. So she said she was very surprised, especially that meant that he wasn't so much older than Christopher.
Yeah.
Her eldest son.
Yeah.
So that kind of threw her for a loop, but definitely not enough to stop her from having sex with this boy only days after his birthday.
She's like, you're 18 now, baby.
By December of 1934, the two were regularly fornicating, And George had even moved into the house.
Like secretly?
No, she was like, our housekeeper lives with us, and I think we're going to need the chauffeur more and more because Christopher went to a school that was farther away.
Okay.
And so he has to be brought back and forth from boarding school, and John went to day school, and they needed him to be driven every day pretty early in the morning. So she just said, Rats, it makes more sense for our chauffeur to live in the home.
Rats.
And he, not knowing any better, totally agreed to this plan. So he's moving into the house at this point. George became emotionally and sexually obsessed with Alma.
Okay.
Because she's a lot older.
Yeah.
She's so worldly. She's still very beautiful. And it sounds like a rabbit. Like she wanted to do it all the time, anytime. And this is a very young kid who's having his first sexual experience.
Yeah.
So he was definitely groomed for sure. And he is very devoted to her and obsessed with her in every capacity.
Oh, God.
He liked to call her by her stage name, Lausanne, and encouraged her to write and play music. They exchanged florid love letters. She would later write that he asked her to write a song for him, and she replied, I could never write such a song. How could I write a love story when I'm living one?
Oh, my God. I mean, that's usually how people write things, is things they experience. So I'm not really sure about that one.
In another, he wrote, I feel like I haven't earned this love. It's dropped into my hands too easily, and I must surely have to pay the price for it someday, somehow. And he would. She later said that the most romantic thing he said to her was, the one word I'll never say to you is goodbye. Which, given the age difference, even if this one worked out, I think he would have had to say goodbye eventually.
Yeah. I mean, it's significant.
This affair was going on in plain sight. So George would play cards with Frances, like down in the parlor after dinner, and smoke cigars together and be generally buds. And then Frances would get so jolly he fell asleep in his armchair, and then George and Alma would go upstairs to have sex.
Wow. It's quite the arrangement.
She is having her cake and eating it too at this point.
Yep.
It's kind of hard to feel bad for Francis given how he treated his first wife, though.
I know.
I mean, this is the second time in this episode we've said you lose him like you got him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, the age gap between Francis and Alma was almost exactly the same as the gap between Alma and George.
Yeah.
And I think you guys know, but I want to be very clear that we are not condoning anything that's going on with Alma and George here.
No.
Because even if he is 18, this is a gross relationship. I also think it feels a little bit different, Alma being 31 and Francis being 56.
Yeah. I feel like that's different from a 17-year-old boy.
Yeah, well, I guess 18, but still.
Well, they met when he was 17.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Think about it. He had never left his hometown. Yeah. He was a virgin. He was highly impressionable and very naive. When she met Francis, she had traveled. She had
been married twice.
She had lived in New York in the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
She had been on the front lines. I mean, this was a very experienced woman.
Yes.
And her preying upon this kid is a very different thing.
Yeah.
Even if the age gaps are very, very similar.
Yeah.
Also, given that Alma is not only his employer, but also essentially his landlord, this is absolutely a predatory situation.
It's very messy.
Within months, the situation was already disastrous. Young George became incredibly jealous of Francis.
How? He's just getting head pats.
I know, but he didn't want them to be alone together. He started feeling like she was maybe still being physical with her husband.
Yeah.
And Alma was still very sweet to him because she cared for him.
Of course.
She did love her husband. She just wasn't, they didn't have a sexual relationship any longer. But that didn't stop George from feeling conflicted, I think, about his role in Alma's life. He wanted to be the man of the house. He wanted to be married to her. And this was all she could give him, obviously.
He's obviously a little insecure.
He's getting insecure, and he's jealous of any time that, Rats gets to spend with his own wife.
He's getting a little crazy.
Yes, so he's getting, real into her, and George allegedly began dabbling in cocaine as well. So that's not going to improve matters. Irene, the housekeeper, had to break up at least one fight where George allegedly had his hands wrapped around Alma's throat,
Oh my God.
jealous of her connection with her now nearly elderly husband. So even after he attacks her,
Yeah.
and it is witnessed and broken up by Irene, her loyal housekeeper, this did not compel Alma to end the affair at all.
She doesn't really make good choices.
No, in fact, at this point, she doubles down.
Yeah.
She wants to do everything she can to make George feel more comfortable. So she had a medical condition which required, I think it was like, I'm forgetting the term of the medical condition, but it was something that required draining of her ear every once in a while.
Okay.
And she had previously had to go to London to have this operation performed. And so she didn't at this time, but she told Francis she did. And she said, I need the chauffeur to drive me into London, and we'll get separate hotel rooms, and then I'll get the surgery and recover, and then he'll bring me home.
Mm-hmm.
And really, she just was going on a sex romp in a fancy hotel.
Crazy.
And then she's like, well, I had to use all the money for what I had asked for the surgery. So they went on a spending spree, and she bought him some really nice tailored suits and fancy silk pajamas with his name. They even bought matching pajamas. They bought wedding-style rings and held a private commitment ceremony.
Wow.
So she said, after you choke me out, I'm going to have a commitment ceremony with you. I think she was trying to make him feel like he had a greater, more permanent spot in her life.
Okay.
The lovers spent every dime of Francis's money before returning to Villa Madeira on Friday, March 22nd, 1935. They came back at 10:30 p.m. Only 2 nights later, one member of this love triangle would be dead. According to the survivors, a.k.a. the potential murderers, so we don't know if this is exactly true, sometime on Sunday in the late afternoon, Francis suggested, he like basically called her into his room or his study and said, said that there was this apartment complex or development that he was trying to get off the ground.
Okay.
And in order for it to go forward, they had to snare this investor. And according to Alma and George, there may have been a suggestion floated that Alma could maybe sleep with the investor to really secure the money.
Okay.
So this comes out later. And at first, Alma denied it, but then she said, I just didn't want my kids to know that their father said, because he had adopted Christopher as well.
Okay.
Essentially, maybe sweeten the deal, if you know what I mean. Give him a little
sugar on top.
Yes, exactly. So George had been eavesdropping on this conversation and, of course, flew into a rage.
Yeah.
He doesn't even like when she's with her husband,
Yeah.
let alone that she may be sexual in some capacity with this other person, and anger at Francis for pimping the woman he loves out.
Yeah.
So he was already worked up because Alma had gone behind the door and locked it.
And the cocaine, probably.
And the cocaine's making him all head up as well. So at this point, she leaves and she goes into her room and he's trying to talk to her. And she's like, look, I don't even want to talk to you right now when you're in this state.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go and have a meeting with this investor because it's good for rats and it's good for me and it's good for our family. Yeah. And I think you're being crazy and I don't have to do what he's suggested. Like, maybe it's just like a little flirting.
Yeah.
You know, like you need to calm down. And he got so angry that he went and got a pistol and barged into Alma's bedroom and told her that he would kill her if she went to the investor's house.
Well, okay, so it's like he's going to let her go to the investor's house and then kill her?
Yeah, like I guess if she tried to leave, he would kill her.
Okay.
He also told her that he suspected her of being intimate with Francis, and he would not have it.
Well, you're the chauffeur.
I mean, when you get involved in somebody else's marriage, that's kind of part of the thing. So Alma is still not recognizing that George might be a loose cannon and that she's no longer has control over this situation.
Yep.
She allegedly just told him to put the gun away and stop making an ass of yourself. Like she's like,
stop, put the gun away, little boy.
Yes. Yeah, she's very mistaken thinking that she's controlling the situation when he's unraveling a bit. So Alma thought that was that. She went about getting her son to bed and packing her husband and herself up for this trip to meet with this investor. Meanwhile, George drove the Rattenbury's car to his grandparents who had helped raise him, and he asked them if he could borrow a mallet.
A mallet?
Now, this is interesting, too, because we know he had that pistol.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't end up being the murder weapon.
Yeah, but does he have bullets in the pistol?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that's where this is coming in, the mallet.
And mallet is crazy.
He told his grandparents that he had to erect a tent at the Rattenburys, that he was You can go there. Do it. Say it. I know you want to say it. Andy's being significantly less dirty because we're on video. I just want you guys to know. You really need to let it rip.
I mean, you literally said it.
Well, he said that he was making a tent for John, the little kid.
Yep.
And so he needed it to drive the pegs in the ground.
Yep.
That's what he needed it for.
Yep.
Okay. So he left his grandparents at 8:35 p.m. and he went back to Villa Madera, where he arrived around 9 p.m. Now, through the window, he can see Alma and Rats. And
So bad.
he's in his armchair getting jolly, and he watches Alma lean over and give him a kiss.
Like on his bald forehead?
I think that might have been where
Yeah.
he was kissing him.
Okay.
Yeah, where she was kissing him, rather.
Yeah.
But this just, the flames makes him even angrier.
Yeah.
That he's so mad about the situation, and he thinks she should be mad about the situation, and here she is giving him a kiss and saying that they're going to go to the investor's place no matter what.
Yeah, but like you're being like cray.
Yeah, she's made him this
Yes,
way.
yeah,
She
yeah.
has every step along the way has made him more dependent upon her.
Committed to him. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
and made him feel crazy and be inflamed with jealousy and the desire for her.
Yeah.
Every step of the way. So after Alma went upstairs and Rats carried on his whiskey drinking, George put his leather gloves on, his driving gloves, entered the house, and after creeping up from behind, smashed Francis Mawson Rattenbury's head in with the borrowed mallet. So Rats never saw it coming.
Yeah. It's also like he borrowed that mallet from his grandparents. So that's kind of fucked up too.
And I believe he hit him so hard 3 times that the mallet actually split too.
Jessica.
So he's obviously down for the count. And they said that at first there was no noise whatsoever, but then after a little bit, he started to groan.
Who, Francis?
Rats. Yeah, Francis is on the ground.
How?
He's still somewhat alive.
Okay, no.
So Alma, little John, and Irene are upstairs, all either sleeping or getting ready for bed, and they had no idea that a grisly murder had taken place. George then went upstairs. He washed up. He changed into the fancy silk pajamas that Alma had just purchased him a couple days prior. And then he went to her room and he informed her that she would not be traveling with her husband the next day. He said, "You won't be going to Bridport because I've hurt Mr. Rattenbury. I've hit him over the head with a mallet." And at that point, she realizes she can kind of hear her husband like slowly groaning or moaning from downstairs.
Horrifying.
Now, it's unclear how much Alma had already drank that night, but apparently after finding out that her lover had murdered her husband, she just starts hitting the bottle. So she just starts drinking whiskey to cope with the fact.
Not calling the cops?
She does not call the cops right away. And later on, she even says that her primary concern was not her husband, who was either dead or dying, who was still actively dying at this point, but for how to get George out of the situation. She's thinking, oh my God, my poor George, who she called Stoner. That was his last name. So she's like, oh, my poor Stoner. How will I get him out of this situation? So she's not calling the cops because she doesn't want the cops there yet.
Yeah, that's so bad though. Looks so bad for her.
So when George was issuing these killing blows to Rats, the mallet had essentially hit his head at such force that his dentures flew out from across the room. And Alma was so fucked up or maybe in shock and confused about the situation that she actually picked them up and shoved them back into her husband's mouth so that he could tell her if he was okay.
Does he need dentures to talk?
This is what she thought. She's like, "Rats, are you okay? Rats, are you okay, baby?" And then she's like, gets his dentures and puts them back in his head just so she's like, "Okay, now can you tell me you're okay?" Like, Alma was not
feel
well.
like shock. That
She's
has to
like
be
in
some sort of
shock. And
yeah.
I think she's thinking, if he's not dead, then we can resolve this somehow. But if he is dead, then we're screwed.
Yeah, but I feel like you're kind of screwed either way, right?
Yeah.
If you don't call authorities.
So after she does that, Alma did get hysterical, but she didn't call the authorities at this point. She called their family doctor. And the family doctor really loved Alma. So he is, like Irene, a big fan of Alma's. And so at first, the doctor comes. But in the meantime, actually, before the doctor arrived, she had George get rid of the bloody mallet. So she's having him hide evidence. And she's getting Irene. So now she's involving people in this. Irene to clean up the blood. And what she told Irene was that it was an accident and that she didn't want little John to wake up and see the blood and see his father that way. So Irene doesn't really know at this point, I think, that she's complicit in a murder cover-up. She's thinking, oh, God, he fell and smashed his head.
Of course.
And I should clean up the blood because, God forbid, the poor child comes down and sees his dad like this. So obviously at this point, Alma's very complicit in trying to cover this up. The doctor arrived at 11:45 p.m., and said that Alma was drunk and nearly incoherent, and she was in for such a shock that he gave her morphine at this point to try to get her to calm down because she was so hysterical.
Yep.
So now Alma's on a pile of whiskey, God knows probably Coke too, and she's taking morphine.
Yeah.
So she is not going to be the best at covering up a murder at this point. So she said that she heard a noise coming from downstairs and essentially found Rats in this condition with his head bashed in from behind. The doctor, who, like I said, adored Alma, took her at her word and theorized that Frances, who is known to drink heavily, especially at night, had somehow gotten up, slipped, and fallen backwards and hit his head on the piano.
Okay.
In their parlor.
Wouldn't there be blood on the piano, though?
You would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think that he's not
thinking outside the box?
No, he's not. He's not thinking that these nice people that he's been friendly with have been involved in a murder at this point. Okay, so she's essentially in a stupor at this point, and he's realizing that the help that Frances needs goes beyond country doctor. So he calls a friend who's a surgeon, who's a more serious doctor, to come.
Okay.
Now, this surgeon came and is not friendly with Alma. He's looking at the scene with a less familiar eye.
Yeah.
So he's being much more clinical. And he's immediately annoyed with Alma because she seems to be getting in the way of him checking out the wounds and the scene. She keeps trying to distract him. She's like, oh, and I heard this noise. Then I came down and I think he must have fallen. And he's like, ma'am, just give me a minute. I'm going to look at the situation.
Yeah.
So it seemed like he was almost like a coroner too, because there was something forensic in his ability to look at the scene. And right away, he thinks that Alma's acting weird.
Well, I mean, she's on morphine, cocaine, and wasted. So
yes, and she keeps trying to interrupt his examination of her husband, which you think if she wanted him to be saved, she'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm stepping back, do everything you can.
Yeah.
And he comes away and determines that Rats had not been nearly killed in an accident, but of intentional attempted homicide. So it is this surgeon who calls the police and says, get over here right away. Meanwhile, while they're waiting for the police officer to arrive, she's like feeling it. So she starts playing love songs on the piano as her husband is dying on the floor. And when the police officer arrives, she tries to kiss him.
Oh my God.
Girl.
Does she know him or?
No. She's like, I'm so glad you're here. I've been waiting for you. And he's like, ma'am, that's not appropriate. So the police officer is trying to talk to the surgeon and get the lay of the land when she starts, quote, chasing him around the room, allegedly to make out with him or maybe distract him from the crime scene. We don't know. or she's just on a whole pile of drugs and whiskey.
Yeah,
and
this is crazy.
She's just not acting right.
Okay.
In any case, the police officer was so scared by the situation that he had to run outside and literally run away from her and call for backup. He's like, we're going to need a lot more men down here because I can't do this on my own. Now, her first statement is very confused. So this is her first official statement. She said, I know who did it. I did it with a mallet. Rats has lived too long. It's hidden. I think referring to the mallet.
Yeah.
No, my lover did it. Oh, it's urine on the chair. Because, like, when he died, he expelled his body.
Yeah.
So she says that. And then she said, I would like to give you 10 pounds. No, I don't want to bribe you. So she's going back and forth, saying she did it, saying her lover did it. Then the
cops are like scratching out.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, actually.
And she's like, you want 10 pounds? Nope, definitely not trying to bribe you.
No, it's not a bribe. It's not a bribe, but do you want 10 pounds?
Do you want to make out? No, I would never ask you to make out. What are you talking about?
I just make out with you. Yeah. I don't ask.
No, let's just do it. It's like, girl, you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at a party, only murder suspect version. So it seemed like at first maybe Alma was trying to cover for George. After a couple hours of sleep in a cold bath to wake her up, she gave a second statement that said that Rats had wanted to die and had asked her to kill him with a mallet.
I don't know if anyone would ever ask to be killed that way.
No. George seemingly signed off on this, issuing at first a statement that said he had been surprised. He had been upstairs sleeping, and he'd been surprised to hear a groaning from downstairs, and he came downstairs to find Mr. Rattenbury with his head bashed in and Alma in clear distress, saying that it didn't seem like this was something she wanted, but obviously something had happened. But with some investigation and pointed interrogation, it eventually came out about the affair, and George, not Alma, procuring the murder weapon earlier that evening. Mm-hmm. So Alma was originally arrested alone, and her charges were updated from attempted murder to murder when Rats passed away 3 days after the attack.
Yikes.
So he hung on in the hospital for 3 days.
Wild. That's a long time.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Frances Mawson Rattenbury has now exited the chat.
Yeah.
And we have George and Irene, who are still in the home.
How is George not arrested?
He hasn't been arrested yet because Alma is sticking to the second statement where she said she did it on Frances's behest. So George is getting very guilty feeling because his lover is in prison for a crime that he commits. So he admits to Irene that it was actually he himself who had murdered Frances and not Alma. And Irene convinces him to go to the police and tell the truth about what happened because otherwise Alma's maybe going to get executed for this crime. So against Alma's wishes, who did not want him to change his story because she wanted to save him, he confessed to the police that it was he, not she, who had murdered the venerable architect. So these two lovers are both trying to take the blame for one another, which is interesting because most of the time when the lovers get caught, they turn against each other.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, they're both trying to cover for one another.
Yeah.
And the Crown said, great, we'll just try you both for murder.
Yep. I figured.
Yeah. The trial of the illicit lovers began in May of 1935. The prosecution stated that it had plenty of evidence that Alma and George had engaged in adulterous intercourse.
Ooh.
And that they killed Mr. Rattenbury for standing in the way of their indulgence of this guilty passion.
Yeah, it's like adulterous, but he was also kind of like a child.
Ugh. Also, fun fact, the junior Crown prosecutor on this case was named Tony Hawk.
What? Do you think Tony Hawk was named after him?
Well, he was, so was Anthony, obviously, but he went by Tony and Hawk with an E. Like
How
Ethan Hawke
crazy.
instead of like our Tony Hawk.
Crazy.
But yeah, I was listening to the Audible, which you guys should check out, and they kept saying like Crown Prosecutor Tony Hawk. I'm like, what? George's attorney argued that George was a young, naive virgin who had been seduced into misdeeds by the older married woman and also couldn't be held accountable for his actions because he was a raging cocaine addict.
Okay. Wow. He's full cocaine bear now. So was he okay with this defense?
I mean, I think at some point they hired attorneys who convinced them to go with their best interest.
Yeah.
And Elma fought her attorney because she wanted to just take credit for it.
Okay.
She talks about this later, how essentially Irene and her attorney convinced her to tell the truth because of her sons.
Yeah.
Like, are you really going to potentially be hanged and deprive your children of a mother to cover for this boy?
Yeah.
And so she eventually comes clean. I think that there was probably some hope that the stories would be so confusing and contradictory that the jury could not determine who was guilty. Maybe there'd be enough reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, it's not looking good for either of them.
No.
So Alma's attorney argued that Alma had been shocked by her lover's actions and had no reason to wish Francis dead, as she basically had her cake and was eating it too.
Yeah.
Allegedly, according to Alma's story and the story the attorney is telling, is that Francis had actually given his wife the okay. He no longer could be sexual with her, and he told her essentially, you do what you got to do, don't embarrass me. Now, do we think this is the truth?
No.
I don't think so. But Francis isn't there to say it wasn't the truth.
He's not.
So they're going with she had everything she wanted. She had all of the love and security of this marriage. And then her husband was saying, sure, take a love or two.
I mean, I guess if he was trying to have her sweeten up that deal.
I mean, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he didn't care. But that's the story that they're going with, which you can imagine was very scandalous.
Very newsworthy.
For 1935. And that they also blamed her initial so-called confessions on the fact that she had been super hopped up on morphine and alcohol.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't take anything she said in that condition. And the local doctor testified on her behalf saying that it was true, that the amount of morphine he'd given her and the amount he believed she had drank that evening would not have made her a fair or good witness.
Reliable.
Yeah, reliable. There you go. The evidence was mostly stacked against George. The mallet that he had borrowed was found caked with Francis's blood. They also found George's bloody clothes. In contrast, no blood was found on Alma's pajamas, and her loyal maid, Irene Riggs, testified that George had confessed to her that he alone had murdered Francis and was sick that Alma was taking the fall for him. The jury members deliberated for only 47 minutes before delivering their verdicts.
Shit.
Okay, so of the charge of murder, they found Alma, ... What do you think?
Is it first or second degree?
I don't know. It's just murder.
Okay. I don't know. Probably guilty.
Not guilty.
Okay, cool.
And what do you think about George Percy
guilty.
Stoner?
Very guilty. There's no way that they would both be not guilty.
Yeah. So they found her not guilty, I think, of the specific act.
Great.
And it really didn't seem like we've had cases where people seduce or manipulate their lovers into killing their spouses for money. Did not seem like that was the case.
No.
She seemed pretty upset that it had happened and worried about her lover in this case. So it did not seem like something she had any prior knowledge to.
No.
So when they said that George was guilty, Alma broke down. So she's in the prisoner's dock and she was screaming, oh no, oh no. And she went completely hysterical to the point where they had to remove her from the courtroom.
Crazy.
The foreman went on to say that they wanted to add a rider to the verdict. They implored the judge to find mercy. At this time, the sentence for murder was death by hanging.
Yeah.
So they were basically
That's why
saying,
she's so sad.
so she knows as soon as it came down, like, he's going to die.
And he's a kid,
And he's a kid, and he would have never been in this situation if she hadn't seduced him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the judge gave no mercy, saying, you have been found guilty, and the only sentence this court knows in such a case is death.
Wow.
Have you anything to say as to why that sentence should not be passed upon you? To which George bravely said, nothing at all, sir. Well, Alma grieved the imminent execution of her lover. George told his father, who I believe maybe this was overheard by a journalist, or George's father later told a journalist because it got out in the media, quote, I am content. They have set her free. What happens to me doesn't matter.
Because he killed him.
He did it.
Yeah. On his own accord.
But really loyal.
Yeah.
Alma was less content. She truly believed that she was at fault for George's actions and she had cost him his life. So she's thinking, I've cost two men their lives.
Yeah.
She also was getting like bad publicity. Like in the press, like she was worse than dead.
Yeah.
Like everyone across the country, across the globe thought she was like a scarlet letter woman with a capital A.
Unredeemable, would you say?
Yes, unredeemable as it would be. As it would be, yes. So she became, because of this intense media scrutiny and her tremendous amount of guilt, she became increasingly suicidal following the trial. And against Irene's will, she began making funeral preparations for herself. She's like, I want all pink flowers. And Irene's like, you're not going to kill yourself. It got so concerning that Irene had her committed to a nursing home, which I think was like a blanket statement for any place that somebody could be monitored if they like weren't in a good mental condition at this point. However, she told the nursing home that she was leaving to go shopping to buy some toys for John. And so she's like, can I have some money so I can take the money out? And she seemed in good spirits. And she had just taken a bath and she had permed her hair. And so she seemed like she was in a good state of mind. So they were like, sure, here's some money. We'll see you later. She did not have good intentions when she left this nursing home. So she started writing morbid poetry and some suicide notes. One note that she wrote to George said, we have lived together, we two, we have loved together, I and you will together die, you and I will swing together. So she's getting real emo at this time. Only days after the trial had concluded, this is when she's writing these notes. And another note she wrote, please do not bury me near rats. Surely my death can wipe out a little of the appalling things said. It is so awful. Those two children thinking throughout their lives that their mother was worse than Mary Magdalene. To know it all is to understand and forgive it all. I did think that by me saying I did it and being arrested, it would help Stoner, but oh God, I made such a muddle of things and never helped him at all. If only my lawyer had not told me to speak the truth at our last interview, that boy might be free now.
Yeah.
She then purchased a knife with a razor-sharp 8-inch blade and took a train from Oxford Circus Station to Christchurch. After departing, she then walked through the water meadows alongside the River Avon, ending up at the Three Arches Bridge. She then smoked a cigarette, wrote a couple more last words on the backs of some of these envelopes of the suicide notes, and knelt by the water's edge. So a local elderly cowman named William Mitchell happened to come across the scene with his cows, like he was with his herd, and initially believed that Alma was bending over to pick out some flowers. So he's like, oh, how lovely. What a, bucolic scene. But then he watched in horror as she raised the 8-inch blade with her right hand and then repeatedly stabbed herself in the left side.
In the heart.
In the heart, she would end up, I'll get into exactly what the autopsy said, but she did this so many times, so deep that she punctured her lung and her heart several times.
Oh my God, this
farmer. She then toppled into the water. So this poor guy runs up to her, but he can't swim. So she's now floating in the river, and he's getting sticks and being like, can you grab on? And trying to get to her, but he can't go any further into the water because he can't swim, and he's terrified.
Yeah.
So he runs to get help, and he gets a different farmer who's nearby, and they both come at this point, and the Good Samaritan who had come running had a pole, and they basically pulled her body in because by then she was most surely deceased.
Oh my God.
But that is like Shakespearean.
Yeah.
I was not
very
kidding.
sad for her kids.
Really unbelievably sad for her kids. And I'm going to get into a little bit about their lives shortly. So Alma had profoundly stabbed herself 6 times. Her left lung had been punctured in 4 places, and there were also 3 wounds to her heart. I mean, that is incredible commitment, because I don't know if most people would be able to repeatedly do that to themselves after first feeling the blade go in. The medical examiner believed that she was dead before she hit the water. Now, this is interesting. The press, which had vilified Alma for weeks and months following the arrest, now had a little bit of a change of tune.
Of course.
As if her sacrifice had somehow wiped the slate clean. It started to change how people felt about George Stoner's execution as well. So it kind of felt like an eye for an eye, a life for a life. And since Alma had paid for Frances's life with hers, should George have to as well? The Bournemouth Times and Directory wrote, "The last tragic moments of the life of Mrs. Alma Rattenbury have done something to mitigate, if not condone, her guilt in a human drama, the terrible consequences of which could never conceivably have been foreseen. She found an escape from self-condemnation impossible. In this desperate plight, Mrs. Rattenbury is an object for the pity of the least forgiving." George's execution was scheduled for June 18th, which would have been only 2 weeks after Alma had ended her own life. However, George appealed with a petition that garnered over 320,000 signatures that begged to save his life. Now, Alma's gone.
Yeah.
George has no lover to save anymore, and he ended up issuing a statement through his attorney that it had actually been Alma all along and that he had simply been trying to protect her.
Do you think it's real?
That is still up for debate,
Crazy.
but I think he did it.
Okay.
It really didn't seem like she had any reason to do it.
Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, I guess she could have wanted the money and to,
Yeah, but then why would she have killed herself after?
yeah,
That doesn't track.
it doesn't track. I think he did it, and then his attorney was like, hey, you've already
There's a
got
chance.
There's a chance, and people already feel really bad for you because you were led astray by this much older woman.
Yes.
And if you say, hey, it was actually the adulterous, evil woman all along, and I was doing it out of love and loyalty, then you'll look even better.
Yeah.
Now, the court did not think that this was factual, but they had to acknowledge that George had an incredible amount of public support at this point. And there were some high-ranked individuals who thought, maybe just let him go.
Yeah.
Somebody paid with their life already. And so they ended up resentencing George to just life in prison. So he was spared the gallows.
Wow.
After several more appeals and 7 years in prison, George was released on, quote, license for life, meaning that he would be free, but he was going to have to be monitored on parole for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He found work as a mechanic and tractor driver. He enlisted and fought with the British Army in World War II. He married and had a daughter. In the late 1980s, he developed dementia and eventually died from a brain tumor at the age of 83 on March 24th, 2000, which just so happened to be 65 years to the day that he had ended Frances Mawson Rattenbury's life.
Whoa. Crazy.
Alma and Francis's son John had only been 6 years old when both his parents died. And this one is tough. He was told by family members that his parents had been on vacation together, like a long-term vacation, and then they had died in an accident, because I think that they had been trying to make sense the fact that his dad was gone, but then she disappeared right away because they arrested her right away. So people were like, oh, they're on vacation. And then after she ended her own life, they said, oh, they died together when they were in an accident. So he apparently believed that until a cruel classmate bullied him, saying that your mother killed your father and then she killed herself.
Wow.
So he didn't know until like years later when some little rat-faced little bitch decided to bully him at school with the worst thing that ever happened to this child. However, John really built a wonderful life for himself and had inherited his father's gift for architecture. He became a protege of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Very cool.
Yes, and even married his personal assistant. So he was like very much in that organization. After Wright's death in 1959, John actually helped to found an organization that honored Wright and completed all of his unbuilt designs and essentially kept his legacy alive.
Very cool.
In a rare interview in 2007, he spoke about his parents' good qualities, his father's architecture, and his mother's musicianship. He said no matter what anyone said, he knew his mother was a good woman. And truly, it did seem, by all accounts, she had been a good mother.
Yeah.
He rejected the notion that had been Alma who had actually killed his father. saying there's no way that that was possibly true. But he also said that he harbored no ill will towards George. He said, quote, he was so young, so impressionable, and he had this older, beautiful woman doting on him. I've never felt any animosity towards him. I just felt he was a terrible victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly forgiving.
Yeah.
John died in 2021 at the age of 92 of cancer. Whoa. And when he died, he was celebrated as a remarkable architect in his own right.
Crazy.
Yeah. So her other son, I believe, also married, had a family, and I think he was a soldier in the Vietnam War, maybe, because he ended up in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is kind of a case where everyone was wrong and no one was right.
Yeah.
I think everyone made a lot of contributions toward the ultimate tragic ending. In conclusion, but he was on cocaine isn't a good criminal defense.
Yeah, and taking a statement while someone is doped up on morphine and drunk isn't really reliable either.
That actually did help her
Yes.
defense. And as always, trust your gut when it comes to love so no one ends up murdered.
Bye.